Hey, everybody, and welcome to Friday with Fran from the road. My husband
Yeah.
and I are traveling. Fran is in her normal spot, but as you can tell, my van is surrounding me instead of my home. So hopefully, the data will hold and we'll be able to broadcast this for a little while at least. And my husband has taken over driving so that I can do this. So I just want to shout out to Kevin and say thank you for that. And so, Fran, how's it going?
Yes. Well, um, it's going.
Yeah,
I have come to the realization, and I know that. Okay, I'm going to preface this with I am safe mentally and I'm good. Okay,
okay.
but I have come to the realization that I am not going to live as long as my parents. And I might not live as long as quite a few people. My body just seems not to be doing the greatest, but that's okay. I really am okay with that. But with that realization came, I need to start bringing other people into the loop because I have some people that I'm responsible for. Both of my kids cannot exist in this world without some extra assistance. So I have started bringing others into the loop and trying to write down where things are and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're at peace. And it's not that, I mean, we're not, I don't want anybody to think that, Fran is announcing that she has some major disease and she's, going to die soon. But it is the realization that we are getting older and none of us truly are promised tomorrow. So this is really good for anybody to think about. My husband and I are going through a similar thing. We're redoing our wills because the ones that we had done last were when our daughter still needed a guardian, because she was under that age. Well, she's well past that age now. So we need to change our wills and update them and do some different things. And that will help. Um, but even you're going to need more than that for your kiddos.
Yes. And I have actually set up they each uh, my son has successor guardians. I'm his guardian right now and he has successor guardians and it doesn't matter, they can do it together, separate, sing individually, and there's no certain order. Any of them can step up and do it.
Oh,
My
awesome.
daughter my daughter has and I'm her plenary guardian as well, which means of both of her and her estate, and and also of my son. But my daughter has a co-guardian right now with me because my health had changed some when it came time. And I did ask my daughter, did she want me to become her guardian? I didn't just tell her this is how it's going to be, but I
Right.
gave her the pros and the cons of it. I helped her make an educated decision. And she said, no, I want you to be able to help me. And I want to make sure no one takes advantage of me. That was her reasoning. And so that's why but she also has successor guardians if something were to happen to her co-guardian or something or to both of us. So, and it, much like my son, they can all, any can step in together, separately, individually, in any order.
Right. And so telling me, um, I think I know, but like what kinds of things? So you said her estate and helping her make decisions. So, and I know you're not an expert in
No,
all
I'm
of that
not.
sort of thing, but just tell us about your situation. Like, what exactly does that mean? And why
Um,
did you? First of all, I want to say kudos to you for having the conversation with your daughter and giving her input into it, because I think sometimes parents will, and I guess I've not been following, but I guess this whole Britney Spears or some celebrity has been under a conservatorship through her parents for a very long time, and I don't. I know it's a big deal, and I see people saying "Free Britney" all over the place. Um, so, in, it's good that you had a discussion with her and that she knew what she was getting into. But for me, and for anybody else who may not know exactly what she was getting into, what did she get herself into by going through those steps with you?
Okay, so I am going to preface this with, yes, I'm not, this is just my perspective and what I've learned over all this time. And there's a really big push right now for individuals to, there are people pushing for POAs, which is power of attorneys, rather than because they're saying you're taking all their rights away when you, but that's not true. And that's a really big falsehood, and it tends to lead to some very heated debates. And there are pros and cons for both of it. But if you have guardianship, if someone has guardianship over you, you still have the right to vote. At least in Illinois, you do.
Okay.
You still you can have guardianship over the person or their estate or both. So I help her manage her finances. I can help her sign into her accounts. I can be at her medical appointments. So those are some of the things that were important because she could not advocate effectively for herself. And then my son is
And me as a
developmentally,
parent of a child that,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, there must be a delay because yeah, just me as a parent of a child that doesn't have all the extra things that you have to think about. That was something that Violet had to give us permission to when she went to college. Was that, you know, we could look at her grades if we wanted, or we could, you know, access her records if we wanted, but she had to do that too. She had to give us that permission. And I think, I'm trying to think how it works with her doctor. I guess I'm thinking we don't have any, I mean, she's still on our insurance, but I don't think we have any input into her care. So unless I was to go through something like that, or my husband, then yeah, I think we're left with the bill, but none of the information.
Yes. And I can tell you that for a fact because I have a friend who had that issue. She was trying to help make some medical decisions, and they said, well, nope, they're an adult. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
Unless they want to sign it over. So it's something that we don't think about a lot.
Right.
Like even for me, I have people sometimes help me make medical decisions. And in order for them to help me, I've had to sign a release of information so that the medical people could talk with them, even if they were literally in the office with me. Sometimes they wouldn't, they had to sign a paper before they could be in the appointment. And you're cutting out and then.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. I think you're back now. I think we're, maybe, I don't know.
Yep,
it's
hear
showing
you.
me that I don't have a lot of bars. So.
Can you see my thumb?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, let me think. You were going to share something.
Stuff. Yes. So I have put it in the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and, well, maybe, there we go. So what I'm sharing with you right now is in that website address that I just shared is a Facebook group called How Special Needs Planning Works. And for anybody that has followed me for a little bit of time, you've probably attended or heard about one of my webinars that I have done. I've worked with 3 different people, and I still have one other person that I want to do this with. But Dennis Farrar was the first person that I worked with, and we did a webinar where we shared, I shared the IEP stuff, and he shared the special needs planning stuff. He is a financial advisor, and he has started this this Facebook group. And I believe that everything he puts on here is stuff that anybody, no matter where you are in the country, will benefit from knowing if this is something that is of interest or is critical for you. As far as his financial planning with you, I would have to double check with him because I know he recently switched to a different company. And prior to that switch, he was only able to help people in Missouri and Illinois. But I want to double check with him and see if that's still the case, or if he is able to help anybody across the country. But like I said, I'm pretty sure the information that he puts in his Facebook group is, it's kind of like IDEA, where he's using the federal guidelines to help out and pass along the information. It is a private group, so if you do click on the link, you will probably be asked to answer some questions, and then you'll have to wait for him to allow you into the group to have access to everything. So that's something that I think is very important. And I encourage all of you, even if you don't find Dennis, find somebody that is in your area that can do something of what Dennis does. Because like Fran said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And if you're just going from what one parent says, that may not be exactly accurate. And you want to make sure, in my opinion at least, that you're doing this the best that you possibly can and as extensive as you can to help your child when that inevitable day comes.
And I wanted to, there's a saying that you hear often in Facebook groups or in parenting groups of that parents of individuals who have different special needs is you want your child to live the best life possible one day less than you.
Yeah, I imagine that would be, yeah.
And it sounds, to someone looking in who's not walking this journey, in these roads, they may be going, yeah, that's really kind of weird and kind of morbid, and you want your child to die before you. Well, when you are the one advocating for every little thing they need and to make sure that they have the best of the best for them, that what they need at that moment, and there's no one else around, then that is a overriding thought you have from the moment they're born till the moment you cease to exist, because you are their advocate, their fighter, their warrior.
Yeah.
Because like you, Shelley, your daughter is an adult now, and you know that you have to let her make choices, and you can lead, you can be there and help guide her still, but you're going through relatively natural progression of, as she grows and ages and goes to school and the next step and the next step. My son will never move past the step that he always has to have somebody with him, and he always has to have someone keeping him safe and making his food and helping him take showers and wash his clothes and clean his house.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I think that's very important for people to understand that don't live in your shoes, because it is a very different way of approaching life. It's just a different way, and it's a way that I think, or my hope is, the more people that know that is how your life is, and maybe their neighbors or their siblings' life or whatever, that they'll be more understanding and maybe more helpful or encouraging in some way, because it's just a different way of going about things.
Yeah, and it goes back to, do you remember that poem by, hi Alex, by Emily Pearl Kingsley, Welcome to Holland?
Yes.
It's a different way of life. And I am so blessed though. I have a support group of people around me that I've actually spoken to a few of them recently, um, because I was making all of these lists and thoughts and organization in Google Docs. And I thought, oh, I better share this with people. Otherwise, it's still not going to do any good. It's going to be in a Google
Right.
Doc and no one's going to have
Exactly.
access. But I didn't want to just have them all of a sudden get a share to a document and open it and go, what? So I've
Yeah.
spoken to each of them individually to let them know why I'm doing it, but I'm safe and I'm okay. It's just it's the
Right.
step, the season in which we are, and what needs to occur during this season
Right.
is what I feel like at this point.
Yeah. That was
So
really strange that you said hi to Alex, because she didn't show up on my screen until after you had said hi orally and had typed it. And then she showed up as saying hi. So I was like, how do you know that Alex is here?
I
So
don't
hi,
know.
Alex. Glad that you could join us. Yeah, that's a very different. Just yeah, I mean, the one lawyer that I worked with, she said, it's an act of love to do that preparation. It's an uncomfortable. And therefore to me it makes it a selfless act of love, because we have to put our uncomfortableness about thinking about our own demise aside in order to prepare these documents. Because if that thought that you mentioned before, and I understand the thought, because of the fact that I know so many families who have a child who has a special need, and so I understand that thought. I don't um, comprehend the magnitude of what that feels like
Hmm.
to be that parent and have that thought. Um, but it's not likely in most cases that your child will go before you. And so you do have to think of, what do I want for them when I can't provide that anymore?
And I had the added benefit that a lot of people don't have. I worked in the field. I worked with adults with developmental disabilities. So I was working with people that were way older than me and had no family anymore. Or we would get individuals that their family passed away and or there was no one to care for them. And all of a sudden they were thrust into where I was and into a whole new environment. And some families had prepared really well and they had trust and they had guardians set up, but there was no one that could care for them on a day-to-day basis. But they had
Right.
someone that would oversee their care and make sure they were getting the best that they could. And then there were those that all of a sudden were wards of the state because there was no one left.
Yeah. And
So that is what really shaped and motivated me prior to get things in order.
yeah. And there's a chapter in my book where that is a similar story to James and his mom, because his mom worked with elder care patients, and oftentimes they needed to be taken care of, but they wouldn't go get the help that they needed because then nobody would be there to help their child. And so, she would often counsel those patients. It's really something you need to think about maybe having your child move into a group home, or maybe into a assisted living facility, or whatever all the options were. And then when she herself was faced with her child being of the age where, they're an adult and what's the next step for them. And her child had, I think James has, what does he have? Autism and ADHD and an intellectual disability and different things. And so when he got to that point, then she was like, oh, now I have to do this. You know, I've counseled these people how many times, and now it's me facing this. And she, for her, felt like it was the best thing for him to move into a group home when one became available. And that way, if she does pass away before he does, he has already been established where he is. He's already, you know, gotten his routine. He's already gotten his home. He's already gotten his family in place, even after she's gone, where he isn't, on the flip side of that, trying to deal with losing her and moving into a new place and all these new people and all the, you know. And so, yeah, it's, you just have a completely different way to handle things than what I do. And it's not something that should be taken lightly. And I definitely don't think that you take this lightly. But I'm glad that you're willing to talk about it, because as you said about the people at the center where you worked, some things were done very well. Some families had prepared very thoroughly, and other families, there was no preparation. And I think the more we can talk about it and encourage people that you're doing a disservice almost to your children if you don't have something in place prepared.
And I want to throw something in here because I was reminded as you were sharing, society does not help.
No.
They lay, because they don't know what you're walking. And I would never place my loved one. I'd make it work. I would move heaven and hell. No, you would never see me do that. I love my child way more than that to ever do that to them. And my question to them is, yeah, that is awesome. That is great. But you can't control your health. You can't control what's going to happen to you. You can do the best you can, but I did not think that, A, B, C, almost D times all the calendars ago, I would be where I am now.
Right.
I mean, I was working this many jobs. And I was plugging along, and now I'm doing well if I'm upright some days, so I can't, but I cannot live up to the expectations that society is saying.
Right. And I get frustrated for families like yourself when I hear those comments, because as I just mentioned, you love your children so much that you're willing to do these things. You're willing to have these conversations. You're willing to do these plans. You're willing to acknowledge when something is too much for you. And maybe something for you is too much, but somebody else it's not. And that's okay. But to say that you're wrong, or that somehow you made a poor decision, is very harmful and hurtful, and it really aggravates me when it's
and there
said,
are lots of keyboard people out there saying, willing to tell you how wrong you are.
Right. Yeah. And I'm very much about the individual, and every situation that we face is an individual situation. Nobody faces the exact situation the same, because what we bring to the table when we face that situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I get very, very upset when I hear those kinds of statements. I can't imagine what it must feel like to someone like yourself who's living it and having, I mean, those comments are directed at you.
Yeah. I know I've learned there's a scripture, guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. And I've learned that I really have to go, they have no idea. And I used to fight every person, not fight them like go punching
Sure.
them or something, but I used to try to
Right.
educate everyone. And some people don't want to be educated, and you're not going to change minds on Facebook or other forms of
Right.
social media. But sometimes if I feel an inkling, I may take the time to try to educate people. But I've come to realize I just have to do what's best for my kids and know in my heart that I'm doing what's best for my kids. And that's all
Yeah.
I can do. I mean, that's all anybody as a parent can do, whether your child has unique different needs or is neurotypically developing. They're just what they are. You just do the best you can in the moment.
Exactly. And Alex and I apparently have almost identical thoughts, because she says each situation is unique and you can't say what you will do until you are in the situation. And yeah, even to carry that a little further, even if you've been in a similar situation, it's still not exactly the same thing. So it's a tough thing. Um, we're getting into an area again where my internet is very fluctuating. So I'd like to try to wrap this up before we get cut off completely in the middle of a sentence. And I mean, this is certainly something I want to continue to talk about, or talk about again, however you want to word that. One of us is frozen. I'm not sure if it's you or me.
I'm not frozen. I don't think. I'm moving.
I can barely hear you, Fran.
I can hear you.
Oh, there. Okay. You're moving now. Okay. A second ago, you weren't moving on my screen. I don't know if anybody else's screen, but so yeah, give us a wrap up, and we'll end here in just a couple minutes.
Okay. My wrap up is do your thing for your child, because you know your child best. You've had them the longest, whether you gave birth to them, you adopted them, you're fostering them, they've come into your life in a unique situation. You know that child the best of anybody else, and you're going to do the best for them. So don't second guess yourself and ask for help. Look for resources. Don't be afraid to join different groups. If you don't want to type a question, it's probably been asked. Use the search feature. In a lot of groups, you can find the questions that you might have. And that's how I do a lot of, to start with, sometimes when I first enter a group, or if I have a question, I'll go, I wonder if someone else has done that. So use your resources. There are so many more resources than when my son was born, than when my daughter was born, than when they were in grade school. And they just keep building. And I would like to think even our Fridays with Fran might be a simple resource that would give you an opportunity to find something out. So you're not alone. You don't have to walk it alone. And you are doing the best you can. So don't let the world beat you up. Hold your head up high.
Absolutely. And try to remember, when those people make those negative comments, they're going through something. They're not living in your shoes. They're not living in your world. And try to just read it and move on, and try not to internalize it. As Fran said, you're doing your best with the knowledge that you have at the time that you make your decisions. Right. So thanks, everybody. Sorry for the shortened Friday with Fran, but I will try to be back next week. I'm still traveling next week, but I think I might be in a location to have this easier than having it in the car. So we'll see how that works. Or if not, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
And thank you for driving, Kevin.
Yes, I will let him know. Thanks, Fran. Have a good week.
All right, bye-bye.